as badly at it. I thought you said you invented the game. Yeah, but I didn't say I was any good at it.
Alright. That's awesome.
So I've seen a few episodes of this show, and it was an entire series.
I love the time travel element.
And it tended to talk about actual events and recommended that you actually go to a library and read about the actual thing.
Right.
That's how it closed off every episode. Mm-hmm. Like, go to a library and find out about the actual events.
Read about what actually happened.
Yeah, so...
Okay. So it actually works.
Oh.
But yeah, David Warner, he's played villains along several storylines. He was Dillinger in Tron. Mm-hmm. He's been a villain in one of the Beastmaster movies.
Interesting.
He's been evil itself in the movie Time Bandits.
Okay, so this is just Mr. Bad Guy.
Usually, but not always. He's occasionally been a good guy.
Ah, there you go.
He was a scientist who created the mutagenic ooze that created the Ninja Turtles.
You had the technique to close the door, Jared? Is that why you're... Do you have, like, the special technique to get the door to close?
It's called locking the door.
Yeah.
It's just me trying to make sure everybody's here.
Hello?
You made it.
So yeah, I left out a few movies on the list, but I did send a wiki link
Nice.
that has several time travel related shows,
Excellent.
including Quantum Leap.
Right.
Did you get tacos, Taylor?
I just
Taylor's
got a burrito.
tacos talking to
Taco
burritos.
Yeah.
I'm hungry.
Okay.
I'm with you. I'm Talking
What did you say, Dan?
Tuesdays tacos. That's why they want you to get
I
tacos.
remember a long time ago we talked about
The first
Talking
week
Tuesdays
we
on
talked about it.
tacos. Yeah, we haven't done it yet, so.
I have sent you an email on the concept of time travel. There's other subjects we talked about that I have not sent you anything on yet.
Okay. There's room to grow.
Mm-hmm. I probably could have included Babylon 5 on there, but whatever.
You can always do an addendum.
Jared, do you have a
Yeah,
professional
well, Babylon
headshot
5
like
it's a couple
Jay
of
Brent
these
Bill?
subjects we had talked about.
No, I do not.
Just the little arm cross.
I could do one.
I probably
guess.
should have also mentioned Schlock
You want
Missionary,
to take my picture?
which I
That's
was
pretty
having
good.
a conversation earlier about that. Well, I was doing most of the time.
I do sit like this quite often.
Yeah, you got the pose.
Goes down.
Most of his pictures,
Do you
he's
have the
got
stare,
a
though?
pipe and is holding a pipe.
Oh,
Alistair Cookie.
the classic.
So, but I don't
pose.
have a pipe. Are you okay, Dayton?
Yeah, sorry.
All right. Well,
How we doing?
I think this is all that's coming. I don't think anyone's joining us on Zoom today because Eric and Aubrey are busy, I guess. So
You just didn't read. You just didn't want to face us.
yeah, I think that's what it is. So chapter 3 is about 1,000 clamoring voices, finding silence in the noise of living. What did you guys think of this chapter?
I forget what page it's on, but there's a really good, I like his descriptions, and he talks about like all the things creeping over the hill,
Yeah.
and like that just like clicked for me.
Yeah.
They kind of come out of like you don't expect everything to come at once, and I don't know, the imagery was kind of neat.
I agree. He does good with the imagery. He kind of repeats himself quite a bit, but it's a book on silence. How much can you say? But he does go into what to expect a little more in this chapter than he did before. I like this quote from William Penn, obviously. True silence is the rest of the mind, and is to the spirit what sleep is to the body, nourishment and refreshment. I think that's cool. And this week I realized that I wasn't quiet a lot, and it affected how I looked at things. And my sister actually called me out on it a little bit. She's like, "You're not doing what you normally do. You need to go rest." So it's interesting how people can see that you're not in your regular routine sometimes and can call you out on it. She also knew that I was working on this class, so and he goes into talking about Ben Franklin's experience with friends. And Ben Franklin wasn't a Quaker, but he hung out with Quakers quite a bit. If you're in Philadelphia pre-Revolutionary War period, you're going to run into a couple of Quakers. That's where they were. But he slept in the meeting house because that's the only place, or he went during meeting and everybody else was asleep, so he just went to sleep. They weren't asleep, but he thought they were. So the first quietude. What nourishes my soul? Could silence be one of those things? Have you ever really thought about what nourishes your soul? It's what you do when you need to relax, generally. Throwing on music, reading a book, watching Doctor Who, or something else in that genre.
I wasn't talking Doctor Who so much today. But yeah.
But there's several things that we can do that can affect our spirit. And if we don't do those things, then we can find ourselves getting more anxious, and things just continue to build up because we're not finding relief. So, of course, I think silence should be one of those things for all of you, but it doesn't have to be. You want my copy? Pages aren't the same.
No, it's okay.
But I got
Let's
a
take
cow
these
on the
as-
front of mine.
I think we're good. Thank you.
With all the world seemingly a noisy place from shopping malls to dentist office to church, even, learning the way of silence isn't easy. Yet it seems like it should be. After all, how hard can it be? You just have to keep quiet. But that is sort of like saying to a baby, "Come on and talk." It's easy, just start. We need as infants to learn the language if we want to communicate, to change our grunts and yelps and cries into words that an adult ear recognizes as "I am hungry, I need changing," or "Can I borrow the car and $20 for gas?" We need to learn its language. We learn to talk. Now we need to learn to listen, to be quiet. I thought that was an interesting concept. Because you do have to learn to be quiet. How many of us have wished we would have stayed quiet in a conversation somewhere?
Are you asking for examples?
No, you don't have
Okay.
to unless you want to.
I was a little terrified there.
It's okay, Tracy. You just gave him one.
You don't have to call yourself out. But, yeah, there's times where I've wished I should have. I just wish I would have kept my mouth shut. Would have been a whole lot easier to have not said anything. I don't have near as many slides this time because I was in a hospital.
Not for him.
Not for me, for my mom. She's doing well.
I was gonna ask you after we're
Yeah,
done recording.
she's gonna go home tomorrow, probably. That's the one I just read. My screen is not going as fast as it does on that. One reason we like noise is because it indicates action. Work is being done, something's being produced. Production can be commodified and priced. There's no way, though, to put a dollar value on soulful satisfaction. And so we've exchanged soulful satisfaction for a counterfeit version that comes in the form of ego strokes we get from our bosses and coworkers and sometimes life partners for being busy. Most of those folks aren't going to congratulate us for time spent deepening our spiritual lives. They don't give bonuses for prayer.
What?
What did you say?
I said I probably shouldn't. I said I want to tell what you said. But
It wasn't very charitable.
it wasn't very charitable.
Do you want it to be said?
It wasn't that bad. I just said, with my work, I would probably give some people bonuses for being
Okay.
Yes.
You know,
Okay.
but I'm sure that applies to me. I would include myself.
I'm sure cases in the news, there's somebody in your line of work that wishes somebody would be quiet at times. So,
That was somebody's there.
so yeah, I mean, we like to be busy, even though we don't like to be busy, but we understand busy. If we don't have something to do, we don't know what to do. And that's even as a minister, the same thing applies. You would think that it would be easy for pastors to pray or to spend time in Bible study or something like that, but that you don't get paid for that. You get paid to go visit people. You get paid to preach sermons, to teach classes. The things that make for a busy day is what even pastors are paid for. We don't get paid for this. We're expected to do it, but we have to do it on our own time. I don't do it on my own time. I don't do a lot of things that I should do. What takes a bigger place in my life, silence or noise? Which of the two do I feel more comfortable with?
I think part of this is definitely there's a cultural element. Like the Western world is so outcome oriented and productivity oriented that a down moment is a lazy moment.
Mm-hmm. Especially in America,
Yeah.
we don't value rest here.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, a lot of recently read Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a biography about him, and he spent time in Spain, and he thought that they were all lazy because they slept in the afternoon. Well, they slept in the afternoon because it gets really hot and it's hard to work when it's hot. So, but for a German that's very much like we are, you have to be productive and everything. He didn't know how to handle it very well. Even though he wrote a great book about living life together and how important it is to be in prayer and in scripture study and stuff like that. It's hard. There is a place in the kingdom for large active congregations, but not at the cost of silence and prayer. Christianity is a faith built on relationship, of people to God and to each other. Relationship is nurtured only with FaceTime, and I don't mean Apple's version of e-intimacy. This is right when FaceTime was first coming out, so.
Is the Zoom active?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay, I'm just.
There's no one on Zoom, so.
Okay.
We really noticed the effect of Zoom and stuff like that during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
It was great to allow us to stay connected, but we lost a lot of relational aspects of things with coworkers and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it I'm not upset about, but others it's you lost track of what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it is good that there's still Zoom available, so David's daughter in California can still log in and participate with things here, even though she's in a different state, but it's not the same. And the church is built for face-to-face time. It's not, we don't do well if we don't meet. Our fears and anxieties make silence scary. It's probably the best quote of the entire chapter.
That's definitely true.
I think that gets to what you were bringing up about it's silent, don't go up over the hill because the danger's over there.
Mm-hmm. And it creeps out to find you.
Yeah.
You really do have to be okay or okay with experiencing what's in your own mind.
Mm-hmm.
Or be okay with trying it.
Mm-hmm. Which is extremely scary. I know what I'm capable of.
Right.
And as much as you like to know what's going on in my brain, you really don't want to know what's going on in my brain. Unlike the people pushing us onward in activity today, the Desert Fathers saw busyness as moral laziness. I thought that was an interesting way of looking at things. So the Desert Fathers are the ones that left society and went to the desert to live by themselves. And they did that because the church was becoming too worldly. And 300 AD is too worldly. So we need to go off into the desert and pray. And if you read some of the writings of them, it's very interesting. St. Anthony, the first Desert Father, wrestled with demons. And as he was silent, there was no one else to talk to, and he wrestled with demons instead. So, but they call it moral laziness, to be busy. Why would they say that?
It'd be harder to be silent than busy sometimes.
If you're busy, you don't have time to think about what you're actually doing. If it's right or wrong, you're just doing because you're supposed to be doing.
They don't see it. they don't equate internal busyness with external busyness.
Mm-hmm. So when I worked at a retailer, who I won't name, whose sign is blue, they always told us, have a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
Just find something to do. Stay busy. They didn't ever want you to think about what you were doing. Just do what you're told and don't think about it. Because if they had 50 people trying to come up with a better way, how can they get everything done? So they didn't like me that much. I got everything done, but I'd get everything that they expected to get done by my lunch break, and then I was doing other things because I knew how to figure stuff out. So, but that's a lot of what that statement's talking about. If you don't take the time to think things through, if all you're doing is working, then you're not thinking about, is this actually something that I should be doing? Is it right or is it wrong? Mm-hmm. You're just doing. So a lot of people have done things that they probably wouldn't do if they just took time to think about it. The whole I was just following orders argument and
Right.
silence is also painful and sometimes scary because we don't trust it long enough to fully experience it. Like surgery, where most scalpels are used, we are not anesthetized. I'm not a surgeon. During silence, we feel each cut, and so we rush through it. That's true even in the most solemn of occasions.
It's a tongue twister, that one word.
Yeah, it is.
Anesthetized.
Anesthetized.
That's it.
You might want to slow down and say it.
Yeah.
For enunciation.
Or just go really fast.
Yeah. Either
Yeah,
way.
that's nice.
Mouse size. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not anesthetize during silence. Just kind
I'm not even
of
say it
blur
right.
it except for the eyes.
I mean, we could anesthetize during silence if you wanted, but it wouldn't do much good.
I might.
Euthanize. Wait, no, wrong.
Yeah.
There are some that I've wanted to occasionally through the years, but people that snore during silence. But yeah, go ahead.
I'm wondering what he's getting at. We feel each cut. Is it realizations that he's coming to, or is it
your
that?
anxieties, your fears, the things that you run away from
Like,
when you stay busy?
Mm-hmm.
you have time to
are
think about
laid
it.
bare and open, so your actions come back to you. Like, why did I talk to my sister in that way?
Right.
Why didn't I do that for my mom
Mm-hmm.
before she got sick, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so you start to feel the regrets, the should-haves, and it's painful at first until you get through the pain, the emotional pain, and get to the now let's do something different.
So sometimes it is a good outcome of silence to work through your, for lack of a better word, like your intrusive thoughts and your intrusive, like those things that come up. And that in itself can be God reaching out to you through silence.
Because you can stop and say, where's this coming from?
Yeah.
Why is this coming up at this time? and what is it that I need to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
So, my sister recently had a old friend call her up and say, and apologize for things that were done,
Wow.
because she got to a point where she realized what was going on and where she was in that.
Mm.
And I've done the same as well with my sister. My sister and I clash an awful lot. I love her to death, but we're two totally different people. See things from two totally different perspectives. But yeah, it's at first when you start into silence, it can cut because you're there with yourself and God. So we've all read verses of scripture that, ooh, I don't like that one. Well, when you're in silence, that's all you got. It's just you and God. You might be in a room with lots of other people, but it's you and God. So everything is personal. And it can be scary and feel like pain at times. While it may seem that all spiritual silences are alike, early Christians, Eastern New Age, and I think I didn't delete something here. That's from the first week. We'll just skip. What self-examination questions do I need to ask? And that's what it's getting to. The pain is, how can I help improve myself? And this is what why Jesuits and Quakers are similar, is because there's the prayer of examine in the Ignatian spiritual exercises, where you're asking questions. Where's this feeling coming from? Is it consolation or desolation? Is it taking me closer to God, or is it pulling me away from God? So very similar, this self-examination. That's why we have queries. The Quaker queries that we went through last year. How am I showing my love for God and love for my neighbor? In what ways am I actually doing that? Or is it just something that I say I'm doing? How am I trying to improve world peace? Or am I just staying back and doing nothing? So, are there any examination questions that you've asked yourself? I guess Zoom's no longer a thing. No one else joined, so it went ahead and canceled out.
Zoom. Okay.
So I ask a lot of, where's this feeling coming from? Because I don't do good with emotions anyway. But if I'm angry at something, why is it making me angry? Why am I letting something that shouldn't bother me so much? What's it saying about who I am and what I value?
That's a good question.
And I've come to the conclusion that I need to shut off the news most of the time, because that's usually what it does to me, is it just makes me angry all the time. So I'll read the headlines, and if there's something that I think is important, I'll read it, but usually I don't. So, because it just makes me mad for no reason. I can't do anything, so why am I getting so involved?
I struggle with anger too. Wesley's heard me say this a million times, but I feel like it's easier to transform into gratitude But what do you do with anger?
Mm-hmm.
Transform it into action, but it doesn't get rid of it all. You know?
Yeah.
It's not as easy to turn that into gratitude.
Yeah, because with grief you can set up a memorial or something like that.
Yeah.
Where you can.
I'm so grateful
Get
for the
involved,
time
yeah.
that this whatever.
Yeah, but if somebody really ticked you off.
And it doesn't necessarily end if you don't have closure on it.
Yeah, you definitely want an outlet for it, at least an outlet for it somehow.
Yeah,
When you
and
take
if,
that out.
if they're unwilling to participate in reconciliation, what do you do with it?
Right. But I
It's
like what you just
there.
said. I like that. What is it saying about me? What is this feeling coming from? What wound is there
Mm-hmm.
that I can work on in a different way? That's not necessarily fixating on this one thing. You know. But anyway, sorry.
A lot of these questions sound like therapy questions. So.
Yes.
They really do.
My sister's a therapist, so that's why we kind of.
That explains a lot.
That's good.
So it's all good. Quakers call the presence of the Holy Spirit working within us sifting silence. Sifting separates the worthwhile from the worthless. We sometimes confuse those two. We may not know what we value, but what we value may not be valuable. We may know what we value, but what we value may not be valuable. Sifting can be a disturbing experience. When we see what gets sifted in the silence, we may not like what stays behind in the sifter. So I grew up on a farm. Sifting's a big deal. Because you have to get the weeds out of the wheat. So you have to do that, it shakes the grain. And
Didn't Jesus do a whole lesson on that thing too?
yeah, the wheat and the chaff.
Mm-hmm.
And how they did it was different. They throw it up in the air and let the wind carry the chaff because it's lighter and the wheat falls down. What we do now is there is a fan that blows the light stuff away, but it sifts the smaller through sieves. It shakes and the grain falls through, and the things that are bigger than the grain go out the back. So, but this goes back to the self-examination questions. What I value, what I think is important, sometimes during silence you realize that isn't important. Maybe I need to focus on something else. So, just to be transparent as much as possible. When I started ministry, politics was a big deal with the abortion and all of that. Part of the sifting that I was doing, I realized that is not as important as talking to people about valuing life and encouraging people is more important than not committing an act. Because the valuing life eventually will take care of the other. But if we don't value life first and the person first, then they don't see their value beforehand. And that changed the way I looked at things quite a bit. And for me, it hasn't ever been a problem anymore. So part of that comes from my own experience, but it's also I had my focus on something that wasn't the true where the value should have been placed. I was focusing on the result of something deeper instead of the something deeper. So the other thing about what's valuable sometimes, is work more valuable or is family time more valuable? Well, I gotta have money to have a family, so work gets up there quite a ways, but what good is having money for the family if you're never there?
If you don't have the family, yeah.
So it's one of those things where you have to check yourself and re-examine, what am I putting all my attention to, and is this actually encouraging people, or is it discouraging people around me? The choice is not between what is right and what is wrong, but between what is right and what is right for us. Have you ever thought of that? It's actually a pretty profound statement.
I can see some cases where that can be true.
We focus on right and wrong quite a bit, don't we? The black and white, there's no gray. The Quakers are all about Quaker gray. There's everything's got a spectrum. But is there a place where something that traditionally would be wrong is right?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't know if I fully understand the sense. But,
Yeah.
Examples would be helpful if people.
I think
Okay.
examples would be helpful.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer, since I recently read his biography, he was a pacifist. He was killed because he's within the conspiracy to assassinate a world leader. It's on YouTube, so I don't want to say the name.
Yeah.
So that's why he was executed.
Wow. I didn't know that.
He had to, in his mind, justify
Valkyrie.
how can I be pacifist and participate in this.
We're talking about Project Valkyrie.
I don't know if he is involved in that particular one. There's several
There are
different,
multiple.
True, there were, but
but
Yeah.
yeah. And for Quakers in general, how do we handle war? My son was in the Air Force. How do I justify that in my own mind? Can it be right?
I know even though I was Army, I went medical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can it be? It's not always right and wrong. It's right and right at this time.
These paths are
Yeah.
not evil, but which one would work better?
Yeah, I grew up like pacifist. I didn't say the Pledge of Allegiance. I didn't, I was like one of two kids who didn't. And
The other was a Jehovah's Witness, right?
no, the other was also a Mennonite. And we were like,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
But it was also like 2004, so
Okay.
like it was not very popular to not be patriotic.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
and I still carry that with me a lot. But we just had active shooter training like last year, and it's not like take cover. It's fight back.
Yeah.
It depends on what year you're looking at for training. That thing alters all the time.
Yeah, we just had it like maybe 5 months ago, and
Some of them, by the time you get to the step of fighting back, you've already disarmed yourself 15 different ways.
Yeah.
I was so surprised by that, and like.
Yeah, when it comes down to the first step is to get out.
Right, of course. Yeah, I
That's
can't
the
remember
pre- that's
it's like,
preferred
it's
action.
like, it's not, I keep going fight, flight, freeze. That's not what it is. But like, it's, get out and not hide. Hide is the one that they were like, if you can't do that.
Yeah, then fight back.
Yeah.
And that's survival. And
But
that's
it's so counter like how I grew up. Like,
Yeah.
we used to go to, I'm sure that you did too, in like the Mennonite conventions and stuff. We would go to pacifism like seminars, and like if somebody's beating you up, what do you do?
What was it against?
you try to get away.
Yeah.
So
I learned
Yeah.
how to
Have you-
fight.
I was never
I know I'm not a
satisfied
very
with that
good
answer.
example of a Quaker in that
Because,
aspect.
And what do you do with other forms of violence, right? Like, it's not all just somebody beating you up. It might be somebody, like,
Yelling
benefiting
at
off
you.
of
Yeah.
economic blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
you know, like,
Yeah, there's tons of different situations and scenarios, and a lot of times there's not a good answer.
what do you do with turn the other cheek, you know?
Yeah.
I don't.
What do you do after you've turned all your cheeks?
Yeah.
Well, that's when you follow up with a spinning back fist because you've already turned. You're in the middle of the turn
so you
already.
just keep turning.
Wait,
and, so,
just follow through. Wait, no.
Right. Right.
Bad joke.
but
I
yeah,
know.
that's where it gets to be. Sometimes the answers that we have aren't good, and how do we handle that?
Mm-hmm.
And how can we forgive ourselves if we did something that we normally wouldn't do? I had a child out of wedlock. I normally wouldn't do that. Never happened again, just so you know. But in the situation that I was in, I've examined it for years now. He's 25, so I've had a few to examine this. So it's but what led to it?
I wouldn't say his existence is something to be ashamed
I'm-
of. I wouldn't be
I'm
ashamed
glad
of his
he's
existence.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very much so. But
he's a
but
good
what
guy.
led to it? What was I feeling at the time? My little sister just died. I wasn't thinking straight. It was a form of grief and comfort. I can beat myself up about it, or I can recognize it for what it was. It's wrong, but it was right at the time. Not right now. If I do it again, it's not right. But I've grown since then. But and sometimes God does things good out of something that is normally not so good. Have a really cute grandson now, so I'll take it.
I think the challenge that I'm seeing with this quote is on the flip side of, like, when you convince yourself that something that is right for you is categorically right. I've seen a lot of conflict and been part of a lot of conflict where I was on either side of that, where it's like, this is what's right for me and I'm right in this conflict, rather than just this is what's right for me.
Yeah.
I think I could see struggling with that a little bit. Like we were talking about pacifism. To me, it's like hard in my mind to be like, pacifism could be right for me, but like not right for other people. You know, there's part of me that's supposed to be like,
when
you know
you-
what it's right for me, it's right for
When you go to the larger
everybody,
sense,
like,
I can say Ukraine should be pacifist, but I don't live in Ukraine. And I probably wouldn't be acting like I would here in this situation
Right.
if I lived there.
We
And-
always reference, like, Belgium and, like, oh, they never had to be violent and it worked out for them. Is that?
Switzerland.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Switzerland got involved, yeah.
I know. I was like, I was like, shoot.
If you're making Switzerland take a side on something, you've messed up.
But, like, who are we to say that to
Yeah,
places in war? Like, it's not right.
yeah. And I can't speak for everybody, but I can speak into, is there another way?
Mm-hmm.
Can we look at it from a different perspective? And I've talked with a lot of Quakers from Kyiv and from Moscow that are on both sides of that issue, and they both say it's a mess and we don't know what to do. And I say it's a mess, I don't know what to do. But let's take care of the people that we can. So, and most of them are focused on providing help to those that are hurting, whether it's wives and children of people that have been sent off to fight, or for those that have suffered from the results of the fighting. So the prophet Micah says that God requires us to act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. What do you believe God requires of me? Or what do I believe God requires of me?
I actually had a question about this, Jared, because the quote in the book was different than the quote of this verse. It was love, loyalty. I'm forgetting exactly what it was. I remember.
You remember the page number?
I remember reading it. I'd never seen it that way before.
Can't remember exactly which verse it is that he's
It's Micah
quoting.
6:8.
Well, let's look it up.
So the book, it's on page 44. It says, "You have already been told what is right and what Yahweh wants of you, only this, to do what is right, to love loyalty and walk humbly with God."
Huh. Yeah, that's a different connotation.
So what's loyalty?
You can have loyalty based on unjust things.
Yeah.
Heck, Darth Vader valued loyalty.
That's right.
And that was Darth Vader.
Yeah.
In ESV it says, "O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, to
Mhm.
love kindness, and to walk humbly before your God."
Yeah.
So I think he just used a New Living Translation or something like
Oh,
that.
they're all good because love mercy is different
Yeah.
than kindness.
But I
The
feel like
song
love
with
mercy
that.
is closer to love kindness than
Yeah,
love
loyalty.
loyalty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, like my own. I love my own.
But if you're loyal, you're taken care of. If you're
Resting your arm.
Smacking
a
me.
dog's loyalty is they're always going to protect their person, you know. Everything that they do is based on their person.
Mhm.
So,
It's a good analogy.
and we're kind of God's pets, for lack of a better illustration. So,
That's interesting.
The lead
Yeah.
song
Not
is
sure I've heard
Seek
that one
Justice,
before.
Love Mercy, Walk Humbly with
you can be a dog or a cat.
Can you put that on the sign up front?
Yes, we are God's pet. Yeah.
We're God's
God's
pets.
pets.
You can be a
Yes.
cat or a dog.
Can I be a
Which do you
hermit crab?
choose?
Dogs teach their young. Cats will push them off the ladder. They will.
So, what I think why loyalty got in there is what most of the Old Testament is teaching isn't law, but believing loyalty.
Mm.
If you're my friend, you'll do what I command you, sort of thing. So it's, if you're going to be an Israelite, you're going to do these certain things, and you're going to be loyal to God. So, to show loyalty, you're going to be just, and you're going to be merciful, because that's what God commands them to do. So, it's looking at it from a couple different perspectives, I think.
The way you'd be recognized is by your love for your fellow man, or something like
Yeah.
that. That was a corollary quote. I am having
And
trouble pronouncing it.
in the prophets, they also, the non-Israelite nations are judged based on how they treat other people.
Mm-hmm.
The justice that, or lack of justice that they render to the nations. And instead of what Israel's judged on is how they respond to God, which is justice and mercy and that sort of thing as well. But that's the difference between those of God and those not of God, is how are you treating those around you.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets to the same thing, I think, but it does make you stop and think. Maybe we should put that on the finding answers together next week. Let's look at Micah 6:8.
Mm-hmm.
Is it loyalty or is it justice and mercy?
That's the NJB. Does anybody know that?
And
NJV, New
Yeah.
Jerusalem.
oh, that sounds right.
I don't know. It's in the notes in the he
Oh,
says
okay.
it's
Oh,
yeah, it might be the New Jerusalem Bible. It's interesting.
It's interesting how just if there might only be a few words of difference between translations, but that difference can make a huge change on the outlook on it.
Looks like it's used occasionally. A lot of times it's just the RSV or the NIV. Which
Yeah.
But I know there's songs.
Obviously.
I know that there's at least a few songs about that particular verse.
Yeah, let's see if I can pull it up right quick on my Bible stuff here. Hopefully it doesn't make the computer crash.
Yeah, it's the New Jerusalem Bible.
Fun fact of the day: if you look in the translation, who did the translation notes for New Living Translation? My grandfather is in there.
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's cool.
New Living Translation. You said
Mhm.
that version. Okay.
Fred Bush.
Okay.
My
It's not my
God.
favorite translation. That's it.
Oh.
It's still kind of cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright, so let's pop that sucker
What
out.
translation do you wish your grandpa first? You
What's
can
the
cover that
what's
question.
the one?
What's the
I
one?
mean, I
There's,
prefer NRSV.
Yes, that one.
Okay.
but wait, you said New Living?
Yeah.
I feel like that's cooler than NRSV.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And New Jerusalem, is that what it
He
said?
has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice and to love kindness and walk humbly with your God.
I like that one too.
And
Yeah.
there's a song about that verse where part of the song is seek justice, love mercy, walk humbly with your God.
Get on the right screen.
I like mercy in there too. That one's important.
It really is.
Alright, so there's New Revised Standard.
Oh.
He has told you, O mortal, what is good. Oh man, we're mortal now. What does the Lord require of you but to do justice and love kindness and walk humbly with your God? So
It's like replacing giant with cherubim or Nephilim or seraphim.
Yeah.
It's a matter of translation.
My main
doesn't want
beef
to.
with the New Living Translation is they use talking about Adam and Eve. They use like servant for Eve, and it can be translated otherwise. So it's not as demeaning.
We've had discussions about that recently about rescuer.
Yeah. Right. There's
Yeah.
lots of other ways to translate that.
Rescuer is kind of a big word there.
Yeah. Right.
Let's see if I can find New Jerusalem. I do have it.
I know Blue Sword Bible has various translations.
Oh, that sounds cool.
I may not have it
That's the name of the
downloaded.
website.
Oh.
It's not a translation. It has multiple translations on it.
Oh, cool.
I've known about it for a while. I just haven't been to it in a while.
Is Bible.com still a thing?
Probably. I mean, there's several ways you can look up Bible verses. Some definitely favor certain translations over others, but
It helps if I can spell
some of them allow you
Jerusalem.
to see multiple translations correctly.
My dad used to use Bible.com on his phone during church, and I used to yell at him, like, you can't be on your phone during church.
Like the YouVersion app, the YouVersion app has multiple versions of the Bible that you can look at. So
Do you want it in Syriatic or in
I want to be able to read it.
I don't have it downloaded.
Oh,
I wasn't trying to derail too much. I just noticed there's notes for the
Yeah,
chapter.
but it is.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up because
it's
that
something
is
worth noting.
important.
It is something worth noting.
Yeah.
So, you've already been told what is right and what Yahweh wants of you, only this, to do what is right, to love loyalty, and to walk humbly with your God. So, love, kindness is loyalty, and right
And in
is
that case,
justice.
we're using the word kindness and it's the same kind of person as yours, or the same kind of thing
So-
as you, I guess. Is how that,
So
that
let's
difference
look
of translation comes across in there.
Kindness. What is that word down here? Can you read Hebrew?
Not at
Hesed.
the moment. Hesed.
Oh yeah, I mean that's familiar. Act, right? It's the doing of kindness.
I didn't know, maybe that was like Quaker. There was some kind of Quaker affinity for the New Jerusalem Bible or something. But
No. New Jerusalem Bible is actually a Catholic Bible,
That's
just so you
nice.
know.
Oh,
I'm kind of curious looking at that. Maybe
What?
this is awesome.
What is
Okay,
that?
wait.
Brent Bill likes
man.
the New Jerusalem Bible.
Full size of
The NRSV and the NIV are pretty standard. I feel like
Yeah,
maybe the New Jerusalem is where he kind of brings in his personality, you know.
Mhm.
Alright, so
And those of you with really good eyesight, you don't need glasses, right?
it's
How many?
Kind.
so
Forgiveness.
it's being forgiving.
Compassion, mercy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Benevolence. Okay.
That's the word.
I feel like we just
Yeah.
stepped
And
into
that's all the
Spaceballs,
different
and you
ways
can
it's
read this. You
translated?
don't need
Yeah.
glasses.
Yeah, I need glasses.
I don't get it.
What
This
is
is
happening?
the way that it's being used in this verse.
I'm just imagining how
So
this looks to
act
anybody
of
watching
kindness,
this,
and
this
that's
on YouTube.
kind of the sense that it's giving. So
We're all just.
That's pretty good.
So, yeah.
Well, just getting a big
See
old
why I
close-up
like
on the
Bible
camera.
study?
Yee.
That's cool. I like it.
Yes, I do. The chart.
That's interesting.
I like
So-
a good chart.
I don't know what entirely
I don't
Yeah, I
means,
know.
but I like
So
it.
There's comedians who make their entire comedy routine around Venn diagrams.
So it's being giving the benefit of the doubt, basically.
Mhm.
So if you're loyal, you're going to expect the best out of them instead of immediately jumping to
Mhm.
Evil conclusions.
right. So I think that's probably more of what it's getting at, and kindness is also obviously very much a part of that as well. So, but I think loyalty's there. It's giving the benefit of the doubt. So, anyway, that was a good bunny trail. I want to start a podcast with my brother called Squirrel Tracks.
Shiny.
Amazing.
Okay.
Silence, not words, lead us aright. I have never repented of silence, said Saint Arsenius. Goes on to say, but I've had to repent on things that I've said.
Hmm.
I do
How does
think
this jive with like sins of omission?
That's a good question.
I think yeah,
Good question.
that is an excellent question,
'Cause I
because
think-
there are times where you probably should have spoke,
Yeah.
and
I
We've
think
all
this is more
repented
supposed to be
of
along-
silence quite a few times in our life.
I think this particular quote is supposed to be more along the lines of, it would be better to remain silent and be thought wise than speak out and prove everyone that you're a fool.
yeah.
And I think I misquoted that, so I'm a fool.
And I think, yeah, there are sins of omission where I should have spoke out. But I think it's looking at when you've said too much instead of when you should have waited and thought things through.
Mm-hmm.
But if you act after you've thought things through, then you're going to act better than if you just act on impulse. most of the people that I managed, that wanted to quit, I give them a couple days off before I would file their notice of quitting, and it's like, think about it over the weekend, and let's see if there's something we can change or not. They usually stayed because they were heard instead of just acting rashly. They usually went to a different department, but they
Never works. Right?
but it's better than losing somebody completely at work. So
A lot of businesses could use that advice. But, yeah.
I don't know if this quiet query helps us much. Could my family be creatively quiet? Since most of you are couples or singles, I don't know if creative.
I'm the only single one here.
Quiet is you can be as creative and quiet as you want. So,
I'm the only single one here.
but the others, quiet together. There's things that you could do, I guess, but the example that he gave about trying to do that with kids, it doesn't work. So,
Quiet circle.
Tried it.
Yeah.
but if you do spend time quiet together, it can be beneficial. How could that happen, and what would it look like? Quakers do have something very special to offer the dying and the bereaved, writes Dana Lampin. Namely, that we are at home in silence. Not only are we thoroughly used to it, but unembarrassed by it. But we know something about sharing it, encountering others in its depths, and above all, letting ourselves be used in it. Sharing spiritual silence with another person who dwells in that soulful space where words don't matter sustains the invisible, eternal bond of love and God. It moves us into the eternal mystery beyond verbal expression. Only the soul, not the mind, can express our deepest feelings. Just so you know, if you go into the hospital and I visit you, I'm probably not going to say a whole lot. But I'll be there.
Yep.
I had a very real experience with this week. So part of my job is that if somebody connected to our organization has a loss or a baby or something, I'm responsible for sending them flowers or a gift or something with a card.
Mm-hmm.
And someone connected to our organization had their adult child murdered a couple weeks ago, and I was responsible for sending flowers and a card to them, and I agonized over it for a couple hours because I'm like, what do you possibly say in a card that doesn't sound trite and doesn't sound trivial and doesn't overly it's just like there's no words. Like, I can't empathize with you in 2 sentences, and I can't make you feel better in 2 sentences. So I just
I'm certainly not going to apply.
Some of the most comforting words given to us when my sister was dead or dying were from the teenagers when they said, "This sucks."
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it does. I wanted to slap my own grandmother because she said things like, "Oh, it's all in God's hands and God has a purpose for it," and all that. I'm like, no, I don't need to hear that because it sucks.
Sometimes
Maybe 20 years down the line, I can understand what God was doing with it, but right now it sucks. And that's really all that you can say. And I've been to many hospitals visits where I just sit there.
don't do the movie cliche. They're as live as long as you remember them thing. That's a really quick way to annoy people.
If you really want to get punched,
Yeah.
say words.
I can't even tell you
So-
how many times I've wished for the right thing to say, and there is nothing.
Sometimes silence really is the best answer there. Just being there.
And if you talk to any counselor that's worth their weight, they will not have anything to say. They generally let you talk, and the question that they'll ask is, what do you think? Because if it's something that you come up with, you're more likely to follow through with it than something that I say. So, there's a reason I'm a Quaker. I don't have to have all the answers. Have you ever shared silence with someone in need? What made it feel like the thing to do? Usually the closer somebody is, the more comfortable you are just not saying anything. But like in your situation where you don't even know them, and you want to be encouraging,
Met them 3
it's
times.
like you're
Yeah, that's.
you want to say something that's encouraging because you don't know who they are, and it usually comes across as that's incredibly stupid.
Well, it's interesting because in my world, I, as an HR person, I know who people are. They don't often know who
Yeah.
I am in those spaces. So, like, yeah.
But the closer you are to somebody, the easier it is to just be quiet with them. When my wife was in the hospital, we don't do small talk really because she's incredibly quiet and so am I, and we'd have visitation time and I'd just sit there and she'd just sit there and they'd look at us like, you guys are a bunch of weirdos. But she was comfortable in the silence because that's what we did. We get creatively silent because she does creative things. So, but yeah. And with my mom in the hospital, I don't think I said anything to her encouraging. It's just, I was just there. My sister kept talking and crying and stuff like that, and I was just there sitting in the back. So, I don't know who helped more, but she was glad we were there. And that's all that mattered to her, was that all of her kids were there. And all of us actually came, which is surprising in itself. Quickly. My brother made it to the hospital before she did.
Wow.
So,
Yeah,
and
that's-
I made it from Kansas City to Salina
Wow.
15 minutes after she got there.
I've seen some families where they just don't. They don't react at all. They don't do anything.
Yeah.
And it's just that they didn't care about each other.
So silence moves us from difficult self-examination to healing to relaxing in God's presence. So that's the cycle of it. The painful part's the self-examination. And then comes the healing where, okay, I might have done something wrong. How can I either not do this again, or how can I redeem or reconcile or something like that? And then once you get to that place of healing, then you can relax and just enjoy God's presence. And the more you do, the easier it becomes, because you learn the rhythm. And I don't know if you've attended long enough or not, but I'll often talk of the rhythm of Jesus, where he made it his custom to worship with his community. He withdrew often to pray in isolated places, and he ministered to the needs of the community. And it's a cycle where he worships, he withdraws, he engages. He worships, he withdraws, and he engages.
That's cool.
And it's part of our mission statement as well: loving God, embracing the Holy Spirit, and living the love of Christ with others.
Right.
You love God through worship, you embrace the Holy Spirit in prayer, and you live the love of Christ with others when we minister. So, and you can't do any of that if you don't have a healthy balance of worship, prayer, and service. You'll burn yourself out if you focus on one or the other too much, or you'll wrestle with demons like Saint Anthony. So anything else that you guys found interesting about this chapter?
I like his piano reference, because I mean, we have a piano now, so I need to play it, but I go from clunky to practice to being able to do it, and give it a few months and I'm right back again. And it's just the practice that makes all the difference.
I'm that way with the guitar. I can't play. I do, but I can't. And I'm the first to say I need to not play. So
you're better than I am.
I was gonna say
Yeah,
it's
you're
hard.
better than I am, and
you're more than. I'll let you play if you want. So
I like to think
I'll
I
even
can
let
sing.
you play on my guitar.
Straight
So
up.
I know I can't play
I do,
guitar.
yes.
Maybe we should do a ukulele duet.
Oh, we should. Yeah, I was gonna say there's a reason I
I've
played
shown.
music.
Who did I show the Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, that was not.
There's a
No, we
ukulele
don't.
orchestra. There's a ukulele orchestra that does the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly theme song with nothing but ukuleles.
Yeah, they get pretty creative with them.
Yeah. That's getting off topic there, but
yeah, so
Just a
that's,
bit.
that's the end of what I had to present anyway. So are we enjoying the book still? Has it helped you understand what we do a little better and why we do it?
I appreciate that we're taking it a chapter at a time, slowly, because it's a lot of reading about silence over and over and over.
But I think, because Taylor was saying that earlier,
I kind of said that too. That it's
Like the
no more
adventure
so
on the
several
rabbit
people have
hole.
said it's repetitive, but I also like that sometimes you just need to hear it a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
You
And
do.
it
I
just
think
helps
that's
it kind of
his
speak a
style,
little bit
yeah.
more, so I think that's valuable.
Most things that are important are repetitive, though. That's one thing that they teach you in how to study scriptures. If it's repeated, then you probably need to look at it deeper, because clearly it was important enough that they said it twice.
It's like another way of almost meditating on something, because you have to take the time it takes to read that, so you're still thinking about the same
How many
thing.
times is "Do not be afraid" said in the Bible? I'm pretty sure it's said quite
It's
often.
I think 365-ish.
Whoa.
I could look it up, but I'm not going to open that up.
It's a lot. The key point is it's a lot.
It's over 300 times.
Being not afraid is something that's kind of important.
And Joshua was told it 3 times,
Yeah.
the first encounter with God. So don't be afraid. Be strong and courageous.
I really like your 3-step method, and I also really like the silence. It's you go through difficult self-examination, healing, and then relaxing. Because I think the self-examination part where I was like, no, this is not about you, Abby. This is about God,
Yeah.
and all I can do is sit here and think about myself, where it's maybe there's stuff to be worked through.
Yeah, and if you think about how Jesus interacted with people, what did he do first, generally? He met their immediate need first, and then he led them into something else.
Yeah.
And depending on who it was, he did it differently.
Mm-hmm.
So with the Zacchaeus, who was up in the tree, how did he interact with him first? He said, "Get out of the tree, I'm coming to your house." So,
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus had a huge line of
but if you,
amazing sense of humor.
Yes.
but
When
if
you look at how
about
it looked, he was being totally serious, but he was
Yes.
his timing as a comedian was like godlike. Wait,
Yes.
wait a
with,
minute.
with Zacchaeus, he needed that invitation
Yeah.
because he was rejected by the rest of the community. So
Right,
the
nobody
first
cared he was
step
in the tree.
was, you're worth my time.
Right.
So I'm coming to your house, not somebody else's house, your house, and we'll talk.
Yeah.
So he had to accept him first.
Mm-hmm.
With the paralytic that they dug through the roof and lowered him down, which, interesting enough, is that's a really cool story, by the way. He dug through Peter's roof
Oh.
and lowered him down into Jesus's room in Peter's house. So it's yeah.
Isn't that house still in existence?
Yeah, there's a church built over it.
You
But
can go
it's
to it.
But what did he do there first? He told him that your sins are forgiven. Get
And
up
the
and
Pharisees really were mad about
Yeah.
that part.
walk.
Which is
Because
easier to say.
He was more concerned with, in their culture, this is all happening because I've sinned.
Right.
So he's letting him know, no, you're fine. Your sins are forgiven. You're good. Now get up and walk. So
And they were really mad at him over it, and he said, which is harder to say, your sins are forgiven, or to tell him to get up and walk and have him get up and walk?
so
The
next
dude's
week
paralyzed. Has
we'll
been since he's been a
do
kid. How you?
Finding Answers Together. I got rid of that faux.
Finding answers.
Before it was
Oh, forward. No.
Looking for.
looking for
Yes.
answers is what it was.
Yes.
So we were looking
Looking
for
for
like
answers.
that.
Yeah.
looking for answers. Yeah.
Yeah, we did have a little bit of.
Yeah,
So-
finding is a little ambitious for this group, I think.
Perfection again.
But we're finding them together.
Yes.
So
Hey, we all need glasses. or whatever.
finding is you don't always find, but you can always seek.
Seeking it, yes.
So were there any questions that were boring into everybody's mind that we need to look into? Predestination again?
Oh, I still haven't written my whole email about movies and stuff related to that.
I did have a question, but I don't remember what it is now. It'll come back midweek.
Are there any questions on the agenda at this point?
No.
Short meeting.
Yeah. Which means I will probably find
I don't
one
have
to talk about. So
Finding questions to get.
finding questions.
You still need to read the first, but you still need to read the first email.
Just so you know, if we don't have a question, then we will go over a Quaker query in the Faith and Practice and discuss it. Just so you know.
So that's the threat.
That's the default.
That's the teacher saying, you know,
So-
if nobody gives me any, we're gonna
Don't worry.
I already have
we're
some
gonna do a
basic-
quiz.
Yeah, I will give you a quiz. And who are the Valiant 60?
I feel like I'm gonna have some questions when we get into like the development at Quakers. I know we just kind of hinted at it last week, like between the different. But I don't know anything
different
about it
groups.
yet, so
Yeah.
maybe I could just do some
And then
of my own.
and then in
reading,
2
I
weeks
guess.
we'll have another Holy Expectancy time. So
I guess I have a question.
okay.
We maybe discuss this.
I
think so.
Go ahead, I don't know.
And we don't have to talk like extensively, but well, we were kind of talking about just like why is it really like only silence? This kind of seems like the main like spiritual practice that Quakers focus on. Like I agree, it's really important. Do Quakers practice other spiritual disciplines? What is kind of, I'm just interested in why.
Yeah.
I guess like why is this the one? So maybe something along those lines
Okay.
potentially.
So sacraments.
I understand why no sacraments. I think.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But,
why did we
or
settle
at least to
on-
some degree, I understand why no sacraments.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. I'm trying to think. Now I can't think. Can't think of anything
Like
now.
relative to other spiritual disciplines.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There was something in this chapter, right? And not didn't answer it, but I thought there was something in this chapter where he said like, well, it's not just like important or whatever. Like this is
like vital.
the center of. So
Mhm.
maybe just that is that kind of what you're.
Yeah, and so that might be
You'll
like the
find it,
answer.
yeah.
So it's just kind of a
Yeah.
suggestion.
Well, but it's kind of like why
It's
is it
kind
though?
of-
I'm not sure. That.
Of all the things that we could have focused
Yeah.
on, why this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
And why does it almost seem like exclusively this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And is it? And maybe I'm exaggerating that, but yeah, maybe a question.
It's something to think about for sure. I can toy with that a little bit.
I wrote
So-
a list of questions at one point, and I'm trying to find if I have a picture of on this, and I don't.
I don't know if I
If you
want
don't
to see
answer
it.
that question, then I won't be mad. You can ask another question too.
I probably won't answer it completely
That's fair.
because it's one of those questions that I don't think there is a complete answer to.
Yeah.
The fact that Richard Foster wrote a complete book on it and he made a career out of writing books on it, and obviously Brent Bill as well. So, but I think it is something to look into. And my initial answer is because it's what other traditions neglect. Is
Interesting.
why we haven't.
Okay.
So
It doesn't seem like so for Quaker we're like right for us, right? So that was like something where it seemed like people were comfortable saying like pacifism. Okay, well maybe that's
yeah.
is silent. I mean, does silence fit in that scheme, or is silence?
It kind of does.
Because he kind of says like, well, we see holy silence as so central to Christianity that we can't contemplate faith without it. But I don't. We, I guess, as Quakers there.
Yeah.
So I don't. You know.
Yeah, and I think it is. If you look at the time frame that Fox was going through, where there was arguments, violent arguments between different factions of the church and everything else, and also there were violent arguments between the Catholics and the Lutherans, and same thing going on with Calvin and Switzerland and all the other groups. They were focused on different things, but what was the one that the Protestant groups neglected? And he found the comfort in just being quiet.
I guess like in my head it's like kind of tied up maybe with what we were talking about with pacifism, where and I think I find that comfort is like an interesting where it's like is this our place of like refuge or is this I don't want to say more than that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I feel like you have this like you're talking about like this cycle of like Jesus retreating to silence and I don't know, I just think that's kind of interesting. It's like is this just to protect? I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
is the end goal just to be quiet, or is
Right.
is there something more to it as well? And I think if you look at our history, the end goal is not to be quiet. It's to be very much engaged with the world around us, which we talked about with Penn as well last time, where if you're not actively making the world a better place, then what are you doing? So,
Being quiet is more of a means to an end. It's to
right. So, but yeah, we can explore that a little bit. I think that might be a good thing to explore. Our retreat that we're going to do this year is going to be basically focused on the discipline of silence as well. So I'm hoping my old pastor's wife will be the leader, but hasn't said yes yet.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Could you talk about the like Quaker understanding of simplicity, both historically and today? Because that's a value, but we also have a very pivotal
It is
Quaker who bought land in America and
Mm-hmm.
created his own
Yeah.
colony.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like that
Yeah.
doesn't really fit with simplicity in that way.
Yeah.
Right.
I will say that if you want to know the best explanation of
He really should have
Quaker
read his
simplicity,
papers.
Richard Foster has a wonderful book about it, and
So-
it's somewhere over
With
there.
simplicity, is that his?
Hmm?
Is it
The
called?
Gift of Simplicity, I think, is what it's called.
Some good songs
But,
about that.
And my favorite quote in that is, "There's a difference between being simple and being cheap."
There really is.
Most people equate simplicity with being cheap. It's because you're wanting to not spend money. But the idea of simplicity is get the best value for what you have. So you can actually spend more money being simple than being cheap initially, because you're not replacing it 50 times.
Right.
So,
Anyway,
unrelated to this,
that
I already
is
sent you the email, but I
what
sent
we'll
them an
do
email
next
about
week.
various movies about involved with the content.